Hi, my name is Heather. Thank you for joining me today. I'm going to be talking about the research process and how to use Zotero to keep track of your research. So one thing about the research process that some students don't know when they're starting out is that you really need to begin with a question. Some people want to start with an opinion and then collect information to prove their opinion, but that's not really how research is supposed to work. So you start with a question and it can be really general. You conduct preliminary research, and that means you're gathering different sources. And then once you have all your sources and maybe you even changed your question during that process, you can prepare a final thesis statement. So let's look at some of the different types of items that you might be gathering when you're doing your preliminary research. These are just some basic source types. Reference sources are the most general. They're often academic, but they're less recent. That means that these are things like encyclopedias or subject-specific dictionaries. These kinds of things take a long time to have a massive reference work made about them. So this is better for more general info. Maybe you're just starting out, or even if you're doing something really specific, as long as it's been known about for a little while, you'll probably find it in a reference work. Books are more specific. They're sometimes academic, so you'll have to do some evaluation, which we'll talk about later. And they can be recent, but they might not be. So if you're looking at something that's super recent, again, books might not be your best place to look. Journal articles are defined as academic. They can be recent, and they're going to be the most specific. So if you're just starting to gather your information, or if you have a general idea about something, journal articles are going to be kind of tough to work with, but as you get more specific, you will rely on them more and more. And finally, magazines and newspapers are sometimes specific. In the library world, we consider them popular resources, and they're very recent. So if you're working on a topic that, like something that just happened in the last couple days or weeks, you might have to rely on newspapers and magazines and talk with your teachers about whether or not that's okay. Okay, so next I want to show you a little bit about Zotero. This is a great way to collect those resources and organize them and eventually also to cite them. So here is Zotero's download page on their website. You can get Zotero for Firefox, which is a browser extension, so it works natively within the Firefox browser. You can also get a standalone version, which is a separate piece of software that you can download, and it knows that I'm on a Mac here. You can also get the extension for Chrome or Safari if you download that version. So in the interest of time, though, today I'm just going to focus on the embedded Firefox version. Another cool thing you can do is you can get a plugin for Word or LibreOffice, which includes a lot of OpenOffice software that enables you to use Zotero within your word processor programs, which is pretty cool. But again, let's focus on the Firefox version today. So say that I'm starting my research and I want to find some books. I'm going to look in the FCC library catalog, and I'm doing research on medieval Ireland. So I'm going to go ahead and type that in. I don't really know exactly what I'm looking for, but I just want some basic information, and then I'll come up with a more focused research question later. So, this is interesting. Medieval Ireland, the enduring tradition. I'm going to click on this record. And up here in the corner, you can see this Z. If I click on that, that will open my Zotero resources. So I've created this folder already in here, Early Medieval Ireland, and I'm adding sources to this list here in this folder. So to add this one, I just click on the little book icon next to the Z, and bam, it's in there. The great thing about Zotero is I can sync it across devices. So as long as I have it downloaded on different devices and I have gone to Settings, Preferences, and logged into my account, then I can always sync across those devices and my research will be available anywhere I go. So that's pretty useful. I find the cool thing about collecting resources in Zotero is that somehow it just knows which websites have books and which have articles and etc. So that's pretty cool. I already added this one, so I'll find something else on Amazon here. Ireland in the medieval world. So that looks cool. I'm not necessarily going to be able to read this on Amazon, but if I'm starting my research early enough, which I do advise, I could possibly see if a different library has this or get it through interlibrary loan. So I'll just pretend that I'm going to use that in my paper and I've added it to my list. I'm also going to hop over to EBSCO's Academic Search Premier database next. We have access to this through Whatcom Community College, and I'll demonstrate what Zotero can do for articles. Alright, so it's giving me a nice list of search results here, and you can see that the icon next to the Zotero Z has turned into a little folder. If I click that folder, I can choose from among different articles in the search results list. Say that I just want to add these 3. And if I select those and press OK, you'll see it's saving them to my folder, and there they are. And what's even cooler is I can expand them in here and even open the full text from there. So that's pretty useful. Alright, and I can do the same thing even if I go over to something that's not a library database like Google Scholar. It still knows that these are articles and I can at least save the citations for them and maybe get some of those through interlibrary loan if I can't access the full text online. Finally, I just want to show you how this might work in a different kind of database. I'm in Films on Demand right here, and I see they've got a video on literary culture in medieval Ireland, so I'm going to grab that. And see it change the icon yet again to a web page. So it sees this as a web page, but I can click on that and I see that it does have the usable URL for Whatcom's link in here. So that works. I did try this with ArtStore earlier as well and found that it only was capable of linking to a search results list, not to an individual record, but that could still be pretty useful. Each item has a field over here with bibliographic information, and Zotero can tell from certain websites who the author is and things like that. Other ones that it can't, so you do have to check the info over here and make sure that it's correct for each one before you go to cite anything or incorporate it into a bibliography. For each resource, you can also add a note, and here you can copy quotes that you want to use. You can just say things about it and it automatically saves them, which is pretty cool. So you've gathered a bunch of sources. How do you evaluate them? Let's talk a little bit about that next. Evaluating sources. So if you are looking for information on whales, you don't want to end up with something that says a whale looks like this. That's just kind of a silly example to illustrate that sometimes you don't know what you're looking at, especially out on the open web. So One thing to look for is scholarly resources versus popular resources, and this is especially a thing with magazines and journals. So scholarly resources are typically written by experts in the field. They usually don't look flashy like you can see from this one here. Um, Popular resources are usually written by journalists. They may not have been fact checked as much, although we hope for that. They're a little bit flashier and usually written in simpler language and targeted more toward a general public audience. Within academic resources, um, this is kind of an EBSCO term here, but within academic resources, there's a category called scholarly or peer-reviewed. And what this means is that peer-reviewed journals have gone through an extra special step of being fact-checked by experts in the field in some way. So that's why your teachers may want you to search for peer-reviewed items, and the library databases are an especially good resource for that. Okay, ORCAs. This is an acronym we use at Whatcom Community College, where the orca is our mascot. It's just an acronym to remember how you should think about your resources and what are some of the concerns that you have when you're looking at something, especially on the web. What's the information's purpose? Is it objective? Is it relevant to your topic? When was it created? Is there even a date on it at all? What gives the author the right to comment on this topic? What are their credentials? And you can sometimes find out about that by Googling the author's name if you're not sure. And do they provide supporting evidence for their information? Do they cite their sources, which you will need to do too? So when you're looking for resources, primary sources are good places to go to. These are going to be transcripts of speeches or interviews, original research, so done by the author who's reporting on it, or an account by the witness of an event, as compared to secondary sources, which just report info from primary sources like analysis, interpreted information, or a secondhand account. Now, before you make a bibliography, I mentioned in Zotero you should always check your sources, and that's an important step, so you can walk through those evaluation steps and then you can make sure that your bibliographic information for each source in Zotero is filled out as much as possible. And once you've done that, you can open your instance of Zotero, whether it's in Firefox or not. And I'm just going to highlight this whole folder that says Early Medieval Ireland here. I'm going to right click and I'm going to go to Create Bibliography from Collection. The tools that are integrated with word processors are really cool for this because there are different buttons that get installed where you can just create a bibliography and edit it or even add in-text citations, but I'm just going to show you how to do this from within Zotero. So it's asking me to choose a citation style, and I noticed that it's not 100% up to date. MLA 8th edition just came out, so that's another reason why it's important to check that your sources are formatted correctly once we do this. But I'm going to go ahead and press OK. And it's naming the bibliography with the same name as my folder. Looks like it mostly gives me RTF format, or maybe it gave me another option. Let's go back and check. Yeah, so I can save it as RTF, or I can just copy it and paste it into something else. But I like RTF, so I'll do that, and I'll save it to my desktop. So now I can open this, now that I've saved it, and bam, I've got a working bibliography. And it's even alphabetized it for me and everything. So again, if you are not sure about some of these citations, you can definitely come to the library and talk to a librarian about it. I also noticed that it added my blah 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 note here, so that's kind of interesting. Maybe that was actually meant to be a note on the citation. But anyway, yeah, this is pretty cool. It definitely saves you a lot of time as a student because you don't have to type up all these things individually and you don't have to gather them from different places. You just have to check them and make sure that your information is accurate. So that's all I had to show you about Zotero today. It's got a lot of other features, but that's a good overview for now. So go ahead and get started. I look forward to seeing some of that research.